So I will just jump in. My initial thoughts is this whole idea of the colonization of the mind, both internationally, domestically. The colonization of the mind says that there is a normative or canonized version of what is right and what is truth. And that's how we formed our core curriculum. And one of the comments was, who are you raising? Like, what kind of scholars, next generation scholars, are you raising? Are they perpetuating this colonization of academia? So they may look different. We'll have the compositional diversity, but the thinking is the same, right? And then nothing's changed. So it's one thing to say we want compositional diversity, but it's another to say we want the culture that comes with that composition. And that's the difference, right? And that will impact hiring, that'll impact the course selection. A lot of things will change as long as the colonization of the mind is decolonized, as opposed to simply saying we want different faces. So those are some of my initial thoughts as I heard 2 or 3 tables sort of talk about this emerging theme.
And the way I would connect with that, this distinction between navigating and subverting, because the challenge that I have with navigating is if you think about a navigational system, it's going to go to a particular location. So that's what we've done for many years, thought about survival skills and how to make it work, but you're still going to the same location that is problematic. Subverting means the location needs to change, and it needs to be a more fully informed global perspective. That's complicated. Let's be clear, that is really, really complicated, but it's actually something like we call reality testing. It's actually connecting with everybody then that was in the room, that's in the discipline. It's really a way of more fully than understanding phenomena as opposed to just reifying a particular perspective over and over again that gets reinforced in our curriculum.
I think that when I was using that analogy, I was thinking less of the destination, but I think that's a very helpful distinction. I was thinking of the difference more between coping, which is what navigation does. It copes with whatever the goal is. How do I navigate my way through this particular place? How do I cope with the circumstances between here and there? And subverting is really to try to change the terms themselves in some kind of way. That's the harder, deeper, much more problematic work. Coping, frankly, on any given day might be more than enough to overwhelm us. So let it be said that coping can fatigue us on many days, but actually changing the fundamental terms, or at least attempting to subvert the fundamental terms, I think is a much more exhausting task. And that's where I think the emotional resilience, the whole issue of white fragility and all that, is about a lack of capacity that has been built out of the weakness of the normativity of white culture that then leaves people that are shaped by whiteness less capable of being able to do the harder, more rigorous emotional work of actually acknowledging place, location, priority, entitlement, privilege, et cetera. And then it all becomes about a kind of power negotiation as opposed to a much richer, multi-level kind of conversation and engagement that isn't just about protection, gain, loss, et cetera, but really about moving into a richer understanding of reality.
So I'm going to exercise moderator's privilege and ask 2 final questions, and I'll give our panelists 1 minute each on both of these questions. And there are 2 parts, and one's a big picture, one's smaller, one's a much more personal picture. We're in this for the long haul, in the sense that, at least as far as my colleagues and I have envisioned this will be a 2-year conversation that we're going to have. And of course, that conversation is happening amidst a lot of other conversations we're having here at Fuller. So we're in this for the long haul, but the long haul involves, as I think we've all heard, a lot of effort. And we're human, we're finite creatures, and particularly the emotional side of the investment of having these conversations. So maybe each one of you can leave us with a few encouraging words about being sustained through these difficult conversations. That's the more personal part. The larger part would be this notion of subversion and getting to a different destination. Make some comments maybe about how we can do that, given that in many respects, where we're headed is also, there are parameters around which we're working, meaning our accreditors, which are part of the establishment that we're navigating. So how do we navigate toward another destination altogether that may not be recognized Okay, two small questions here. We'll wrap up our time together.
So emotional resilience and signs of hope. I think to me the greatest is simply the unbelievable pleasure of discovering and realizing another person's experience. I just find that captivating to me. I want to know people that are not like me. I want to know what their experiences are like. I want to understand how they see the world. I want to be disrupted by their narrative that's just not my narrative. I want to be able to hear and, in some small measure, empathetically enter into another person's world. And I try to practice this in a less personal way by reading fiction that is international. But that is only to build a repertoire for a much more interesting thing, which is actually face-to-face real relationships and conversations.
Well, I could build on that. I think of Brian Stevenson, who talks about proximity and how important that is. It's relational. It can't simply be tolerance. I mean, that language we don't use anymore. I'd hate to think that people are just tolerating me. It is relational, and it's being in proximity, and I think that's important. This is a good church group, so I can say this. It doesn't help to give a moralistic, here are 3 things that you need to do this week to survive. It's a relationship with Jesus that will guide you, right? So there's this mindset piece that you need to hold on to, as well as certain actions, policies, and procedures that need to change. The hope, I think, for me would be we have to hold on to multiple realities. And that is to say, on the one hand, progress is being made. It's incremental, it's very slow, it's not as fast as maybe we want it to go, but progress is being made, and yet there's still a lot more to do. F. Scott Fitzgerald famously said, the test of a first-rate mind is to hold on to 2 seemingly contradictory thoughts at the same time and still being able to function. I think of that for us. How do we hold on to the multiple realities that we're making progress, there is hope in that, and yet there's still a lot more work to be done. Final thought in terms of subversion would be you have to look deeper. We can't simply look at the surface level and address the surface change. It has to be deeper. We have to think about how culture and our mindset ultimately leads to our actions and policies. And so looking deeper.
When I think about subversion and capacity, we are creative souls. And yes, I said souls, Warren Brown, and Brad is here. And souls. And what the field needs, and even our accreditors, is to know where we're going to be in the future. Case in point, anger, we used to think about just suppression and expression of anger. Not until 1988 did the concept of anger regulation, was that something that we measured. Now think about that. We've understood regulation of anger in the Bible for a long time. Yep. Be angry and sin not. Yeah. But so there's a way in which we have to be courageous enough to know and understand that God will give us insights that the world needs in the future. Right. And sometimes in our fields, we don't get published as quickly if we kind of take those steps, but we do get published because we're following absolutely what the world does need. So I think we have to be courageous in that way. I think, and in fact, that's exciting, and that's a redemptive engagement from my perspective. Amen. What helps me more emotionally is that's why I ended with faith, hope, and love. Because yes, to love, but also to be angry and to go through that so that I don't redirect that or displace that. But you know what I did today? Things are changing for me because I was behind in preparation even for this, right? But a wonderful thing was happening in an elementary school. Children were getting their dental health checked. I'm part of an organization. I volunteered there for an hour. Seeing, and it was predominantly Latino and African-American children, Latina and Latino African-American children, to see them just being together in the way that they are. We need to be sure that we're out beyond our families, into the community, doing things. You see the world that's coming. And I think with the little ones, that's very important. That gives me hope.